Imagine walking alone through a prehistoric valley when suddenly you hear something moving behind you. You turn around. And there it is. A massive saber-toothed predator staring directly at you. It is low to the ground. Extremely powerful. And armed with enormous curved canine teeth designed to deliver a devastating bite. You have no gun. No vehicle. No modern weapon. Only your body and whatever you can find around you. So what would you do? Should you run? Should you climb a tree? Should you stand your ground? Or would trying to fight back be your biggest mistake? The terrifying truth is that surviving an encounter with a saber-toothed predator would not simply depend on strength. It would depend on distance, terrain, timing, and whether you could recognize the danger before the animal attacked. Because against a predator built for close-range ambush, one wrong decision could be your last. So if you were suddenly standing face-to-face with one of these prehistoric hunters, would you actually have any chance of surviving? Imagine walking through a prehistoric valley thousands of years ago. The air is warm. Tall grass moves slowly in the wind. You hear birds somewhere in the distance. Everything seems quiet. Then suddenly you hear a heavy movement behind you. You turn around. And standing among the grass is a massive saber-toothed predator. It is watching you. Its body is low and powerful. Its front legs are extremely strong. And two enormous canine teeth extend from its mouth. You have no gun. No vehicle. No modern weapon. Only your body and the environment around you. The question is simple. Could you survive? To understand the answer, we first need to understand what you are actually facing. The animal we often call the saber-toothed tiger was not really a tiger. One of the most famous saber-toothed predators was Smilodon. It lived in the Americas during the Pleistocene. And although its enormous canine teeth make it look like a giant version of a modern tiger, its body was built differently. Smilodon had a powerful muscular build. Its front limbs were especially strong. Its body was relatively compact. And its long canine teeth were adapted for delivering powerful bites to vulnerable areas of prey. This was not an animal designed simply to chase prey across open ground for long distances. It was more heavily built. That difference matters. Imagine you are standing in an open field. The predator notices you. Your first instinct might be to run. That sounds reasonable. Humans have survived dangerous animals for thousands of years by escaping them. But running from a large predator is not always the best option. A predator can react extremely quickly over a short distance. And if the animal is adapted for ambush, surprise is one of its greatest advantages. The worst thing you could do would be to turn your back and run blindly without knowing where you are going. You could trip. You could run into thick vegetation. You could lose sight of the animal. Or you could accidentally move into a position where it can attack from the side. So what should you do first? Look at the terrain. This might be the most important part of survival. If you are in an open area, you have more visibility. You can see where the animal is. You can see where you can move. And you have fewer obstacles that can suddenly hide the predator. If you are surrounded by dense vegetation, the situation becomes much more dangerous. A saber-toothed predator could potentially use cover to remain hidden. That means the environment itself could become part of the encounter. Now imagine the predator begins moving toward you. It is not charging yet. It is watching. You are watching too. This is the moment when your behavior matters. You do not want to make sudden movements. You do not want to fall. And you certainly do not want to move toward the animal. The goal would be to create distance while keeping the predator in sight. Slowly move towards safer terrain. Put large obstacles between yourself and the animal if possible. A large fallen tree. A large rock. A steep slope. Anything that makes a direct attack more difficult could become valuable. This is important because humans have one advantage that many predators do not. We can use the environment creatively. A human does not need to be physically stronger than a predator. We only need to find a way to make the predator lose its advantage. Imagine a large rock between you and the animal. The predator cannot simply reach you instantly. It has to move around the obstacle. That gives you time. Time is extremely valuable. But now we need to understand something else. Would Smilodon actually attack a human? We cannot know exactly how an extinct predator would behave in every situation. Animal behavior is complicated, and there is no reason to assume that every encounter would automatically end in an attack. A predator has to consider risk. Attacking large prey can be dangerous. Even a powerful predator can be injured, and an injury could mean starvation later. This is one reason predators often choose situations where they have an advantage. Surprise, close distance, vulnerable prey, and a favorable position. If you appear difficult to attack, the animal may decide that the risk is not worth it. This is where the human brain becomes important. You would not be trying to defeat the predator. You would be trying to convince it that you are not an easy target. Now imagine the worst possible situation. The animal suddenly charges. You have only a few seconds. What happens next? This is where many survival stories become unrealistic. People often imagine that they could simply punch the animal, grab its jaws, or fight it with their bare hands. That would be an extremely dangerous idea. A large saber-toothed predator would have enormous physical advantages. Its muscles, its claws, its jaws, its speed over short distances, and its ability to attack with its entire body. A human would have almost no chance in a direct physical fight. So your goal would be avoidance, not combat. If you have an object in your hands, a stick, a large branch, a stone, or anything that can increase the distance between you and the animal, it could potentially help create a barrier. But this does not mean you should try to fight. The object would be useful mainly because distance matters. A predator that has to move around an obstacle cannot attack as easily as one that can reach you directly. Now imagine you are near a tree. Your first thought might be to climb it. But this is not automatically a safe solution. Modern big cats are capable climbers to different degrees. And we do not have enough evidence to know exactly how Smilodon would have behaved around trees. The safest strategy would not be to assume that climbing a tree guarantees survival. Instead, you would want to use the tree as an obstacle. Keep the trunk between you and the predator. Move around it while maintaining distance. Again, the principle is simple. Do not allow the animal to get a clean, direct path to you. Now imagine there is a large boulder nearby. This could be even more useful. You move toward it. The predator follows. You keep the rock between you and the animal. Suddenly the predator cannot attack from the same direction. You have created a barrier. The encounter becomes a game of positioning. And positioning is something humans can understand extremely well. This is why terrain has always been important in encounters between humans and dangerous animals. A human in an open field is vulnerable. A human behind a barrier has more options. A human inside a protected shelter has even more. This principle probably helped our ancestors survive many dangerous animals. Not because humans were stronger, but because humans could use intelligence and cooperation. Now imagine that you are not alone. There are several other humans nearby. The situation changes dramatically. A group can make noise. A group can watch different directions. A group can create a stronger defensive position. A group can protect children. And a group can respond to danger much more effectively than one individual. This may have been one of the greatest advantages humans developed during prehistory. Cooperation. Humans are physically vulnerable compared with many large predators. We do not have claws. We do not have large canine teeth. We are not especially fast over short distances. But we can communicate. We can plan. We can warn each other. And we can work together. A predator looking at one isolated human might see a potential target. A predator looking at a large organized group might see something very different. This is one reason fire may also have been so important to early humans. Fire creates light. It creates heat. And it can make the environment less comfortable for many wild animals. But again, we should be careful. It would be a mistake to imagine that every prehistoric predator was terrified of fire. Wild animals can behave unpredictably. Still, a campfire could create a boundary. It could reduce darkness. And it could help humans detect animals approaching at night. Imagine a prehistoric campsite after sunset. The group sits around the fire. The surrounding landscape is almost completely dark. Then two eyes appear beyond the edge of the firelight. Everyone becomes silent. The animal does not immediately attack. It watches. The humans watch back. The fire creates a psychological boundary. The predator would have to move closer to investigate. And the humans have time to react. This is the kind of situation where human technology begins to compensate for physical weakness. A fire. A stone. A stick. A shelter. None of these things is impressive by itself. But together they can change the balance between humans and predators. Now return to the encounter with the saber-toothed predator. You are still standing in the valley. The animal is watching you. You have maintained distance. You have avoided running blindly. And you have moved toward terrain that gives you more protection. What happens next? Perhaps the predator continues approaching. Perhaps it stops. Perhaps it loses interest. Perhaps it moves away. And this is an important possibility. Survival does not always require defeating the threat. Sometimes survival simply means convincing the threat to leave. Predators are not machines. They have energy costs. They take risks. They make decisions. And if the potential reward is not worth the danger, they may choose another opportunity. This is why appearing difficult to attack could be more valuable than appearing aggressive. You want to remain aware. You want to remain upright. You want to maintain distance. And you want to move towards safety. But what if the predator gets extremely close? Now the situation becomes much more dangerous. At close range, its physical advantages become overwhelming. A human cannot compete with a powerful predator using bare hands. The enormous canine teeth would be extremely dangerous. The claws could cause serious injury. And the animal could use its body weight and powerful front limbs to control prey. This is where one of the biggest myths about saber-toothed predators should be avoided. Those giant teeth were not simply oversized knives. They were specialized weapons. The exact way Smilodon used them is still studied and debated. But researchers generally believe the animal relied on powerful jaws and its muscular body to subdue prey before delivering damaging bites to vulnerable areas. That means the safest strategy for a human would be to prevent the predator from reaching that close range in the first place. Distance is your friend. Obstacles are your friends. Awareness is your friend. Panic is your enemy. Now imagine you manage to reach a rocky area. There is a steep slope ahead. The predator stops. It looks at you. You slowly move upward. The terrain becomes more difficult. The animal follows for a moment. Then stops. You keep moving. The distance grows. Finally, the predator turns away. You have survived. Not because you were stronger. Not because you defeated the animal. But because you understood the encounter. This is the real lesson hidden inside the saber-toothed predator. Survival is often about decisions made before the attack. Can you recognize danger? Can you avoid surprise? Can you control panic? Can you use the terrain? Can you create distance? Can you reach other people? These questions matter more than physical strength. And this is especially important when thinking about prehistoric humans. They lived alongside dangerous animals. They did not have modern medicine. They did not have emergency services. They did not have firearms. An injury could become a serious problem. That meant avoiding unnecessary danger was extremely important. Humans who survived were not necessarily the strongest. They were often the ones who learned how to recognize danger and respond intelligently. Over thousands of generations, those lessons accumulated. Where to build camps. When to travel. Where to find water. How to use fire. How to make tools. How to cooperate. And how to avoid predators. Eventually, humans became one of the most adaptable species on Earth. Not because we became physically stronger, but because we became better at solving problems. The saber-toothed predator disappeared long ago. Smilodon is extinct. But its remains continue to tell us something about the world our ancestors once inhabited. Imagine walking across a landscape where giant predators could be hiding in the grass. Where large herbivores moved across the plains. Where every night brought new sounds. And where survival depended on awareness. That was the world of prehistoric humans. A world where a simple stone could become a tool. A fire could become protection. A group could become a defense. And knowledge could mean the difference between life and death. So could you survive an encounter with a saber-toothed predator? If you suddenly appeared alone in its territory with no modern equipment, your chances would not be good. A direct fight would be extremely dangerous. Running blindly would be a terrible strategy. And assuming that you could simply overpower the animal would be a serious mistake. But survival would not necessarily be impossible. If you could detect the animal early, keep your distance, use obstacles, move towards safer terrain, stay calm, and avoid giving the predator an easy opportunity, you might have a chance. And that is perhaps the most important lesson from the ancient world. Humans did not survive because they were the strongest creatures in the landscape. They survived because they learned. They observed. They remembered. They cooperated. And they found ways to turn weakness into an advantage. The saber-toothed predator had enormous teeth. Humans had something different. A mind capable of asking one simple question. How do I survive this? And sometimes that question was more powerful than any weapon.